Hello and welcome to Fantasy Fives, a football podcast where I, Ray Bradshaw, chat to an esteemed guest or someone that will answer one of my messages all about their dream five-a-side team. If you've enjoyed the show so far, remember, rate it on iTunes and all the other places you get it. And remember, subscribe so you get push notifications. Today, we're joined by someone, I'm very excited about this one, the voice of Scottish football for my generation, I would say. Like Archie McPherson, but he doesn't show his shins. Today, we're joined by host of over, 4,000 Sports Sounds, Richard Gordon. Richard, how are you?
Very well indeed. Thank you for inviting me, Ray.
How weird is it when people meet you face to face and they see you? Because is that odd?
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens a lot. Now that I've been back up in the northeast for 3 years or so now, and I think my face is better known probably up here than it is in the central belt. But I mean, for years, you'd go into a shop, you'd go into a petrol station, and you just see the look on someone's face thinking, I know that voice.
Really? Is that what happens?
Yeah, and quite often they would say nothing. Sometimes they would say, "Oh, are you that Manny off the radio?" I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Because what, like, I saw your stat the other day. No, this may be a month or two ago. 4,000th Sports Sound. Do you keep a record? Because having worked at the BBC, I get the feeling no one would have had a fucking clue about that, Richard. So is that you?
No. Ray, you know it was. I mean, I have spent 35 years just devouring stats. No, I went freelance, about 95, and from that point onwards, I had been keeping them previously, but from that point onwards, it just became part of the accounting regime, if you like, just to make sure I knew which programs I'd done and which I could invoice for. And so I've always kept it. I have my stats folder for each season. At the end of each season, that get transferred into the next one, and I've just always kept the tally going. So I knew there was some kind of milestone coming up. So I think it was 3 games away from it. I started doing the additions. I thought, oh, this is coming up. Did you get
a pen? Did you get a pen? Did they give you anything?
No, absolutely nothing. You would think after all these years and all those programs and all those hours, but yeah, just completely blanked me. A couple of posts on social media.
Yeah, that's what I saw. But what, see, for you, because I remember chatting to you once and asking about how you got into it and stuff like that, because you said, what did you start Sports Sound, 92?
October 91.
91, yeah. So I was born in 88, right? So
great.
Yes, thank you. So growing up, you were the voice of Scottish football for me. So I would listen to Thomas Stewart, and then you do Sports Sound, and then on the supporters bus, it might be the 5:30 show, Off the Ball or whatever, it would come back on. So all that time, you must have had some like incredible moments, some really low moments. What's been the most surreal moment you've had, do you think? Who's the person you've met or the thing you've done, you've just been like, oh God, how did I end up doing this?
Oh my goodness, there were so many. I guess the one team in Tallinn afternoon was pretty bizarre.
You're
there? I wasn't there. I was actually I was away getting my hair cut, and I got a message to say you need to come into the studio. You cannot believe what is happening. So
Really?
I kind of raced in, and from memory, it was myself and Charlie Nicholas in the studio here. And then it was Alistair Alexander who was the commentator and Chick who was the reporter out there. And obviously all this is unfolding and the squad have turned up and Alistair was away trying to find out what was happening. And there was an issue with a line and Chick had, I mean, what would clearly have been one of the early mobile phones, so probably something the size of a suitcase. So Chick actually did the legendary commentary over the phone as Scotland kicked off. Yeah. And of course, just the kick off, and then I think John Collins, I seem to remember, hands in the air celebrating. I mean, that was just utterly surreal. I mean, some of the places some of the grounds I've gone to, you always have this thing where Scottish clubs seem to need to have the facilities, and they had to have the UEFA licenses, and the stadiums had to be health and safety guaranteed and everything. Some of the crumbling wrecks that are presented and also back in the day, I mean, technology has moved on so much, and what we can do these days is brilliant. But back in the day, you essentially rocked up in Zagreb looking for 2 little wires that were sticking out of a wall. And with your little box of tricks and a couple of screwdrivers, you had to somehow attach the equipment to that. just hope that you would get through. And honestly, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like I failed you because I can't tell you how many
No,
foreign trips I've been on, but it would be significant, and not once did we not get on air. Sometimes that included the handing over of 100 drachmas or similar bribes
was there?
to
Was that a
to look.
thing? Were you having
Oh
to?
yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, there was one time. It was myself and the lad from Radio Clyde, and the two of us, and we were there. And there was the equivalent of a Romanian BT engineer standing in the room like this, just looking at us. And I went up to him and explained, BBC Radio Scotland, I'm trying to get on air. We've got a programme in an hour's time. And he just looked at me. And so I went in my pocket, handed him over some local currency, or dollars probably, which were more acceptable
Mhm.
for the most part. And literally within 15 seconds, I was talking to the studio. The guy from Radio Cloud refused to bribe the guy. I said, well, it's up to you, but you're not getting on air
Yeah.
unless you actually pay up. And I think you did eventually. But I mean, there were so many experiences. And it's amazing, actually, just even the process of talking to you, just little images are flashing through my
Yeah.
mind. The most surreal night of my life happened in Moscow in 1995, and that was the
Okay.
night that I thought I was going to die. Um,
How? What? What?
and
What?
it was the day before the game. It was Scotland Russia in a European Championship qualifier, and we had been. I mean, just the thought of going to Moscow was phenomenal.
Yep.
As a kid growing up through the Cold War, and couldn't have imagined I'd ever be in Red Square or in that city. And anyway, there was a local Scottish guy who we'd been told called I can't remember David. I can't remember his surname, but anyway, he was based in Moscow, a Moscow businessman
Oh,
who
okay.
was going to look after the press and media. So he did take us out, and he took us to. My recollection is there were 7 former churches around Moscow that had now been turned into casinos and nightclubs,
Right.
essentially. And he took us to one of these. To cut a very long story short, there was some kind of scuffle. The lad got stabbed.
What? Your guide?
The guide got stabbed in the midst of it all as he was trying to calm it down. And then we were in this big room with these massive, the old church doors and huge oak doors. And this guy, who must have been about 6'8" wide and tall,
Yeah.
was standing there with a black suit on, with the earpiece and a clear bulge in the jacket. And he put his hand in, took out this gun, and said, "Nobody moves." And the door slammed. Uh,
Were you reaching for your 100
we
drachmas,
we
ready to
sat
go?
there. You know what? I felt that probably wasn't going to be enough. Um, and we'd had a few drinks. They'd been looking after us. I've never turned so sober so quickly in all my life. And it was about half an hour, and eventually the doors swung open. This guy wandered back in and just looked around us and said, "There are taxis outside. Go." And we were out of there like a
And
shot.
I'm guessing you can't talk about that on air the next day.
I don't think I did. I think I was still in shock, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
It was just remarkable. But then the next day, we went down the stairs for breakfast, and the guy was standing there. The guy, and I said,
And he was.
"What happened? What happened last night? How are you?" And he just kind of lifted his shirt, and he'd some strapping around him, and he said, "Yeah, they took me away." So the place was owned by the mafia,
Yeah.
the Russian mafia. He had got taken away, and as he was to presumably a safe hotel, a safe hospital, and as he was being patched up, the mafia boss had come up to his bedside and said, "I'm sorry, that should not have happened. What do you want me to do to the man who stabbed you?" And he realized in that moment that this was an opportunity, and he said, "It's fine, it's fine." And he said, "Because I did that, I knew that I could call in a favor at some point in the future, which I knew I was going to need." And quite blasé about the whole thing.
It's so funny, the idea of that
so,
happening, and then you going home to look at Tosh McKinley's stats, like not even doing
well,
it.
I'll be honest, the nil-nil draw against Russia felt like like a breeze. Now, I think that was the night where Duncan Shearer was on the bench for Scotland. Yeah, Duncan's a huge, passionate Scotland fan. Great player, great guy, Duncan. But it was so cold that night. He was at the bench, and he said I had so many layers on, and I was willing Craig Brown not to put me on because the last thing I wanted was to take the warm stuff off.
Because
No, so that was probably the most. If I think back, that was probably the
yeah, the
most
time you witnessed attempted
remarkable.
murder. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and felt in serious danger of losing my life.
Yeah, Richard, man. Because
All for sports sound.
I know. Well, this is what I wanted to ask you because I've done two sports sounds, and I think so I'm
Wow.
only 4,000 behind you, or whatever. But how do you? This is a question that blows my mind, right? So you present for probably 5 hours on air. If you're doing open all mics, if you're doing all this thing, how do you not go to the toilet? What do you do?
And that has become more of an issue the older I've got. I can tell you. I mean, I don't know that listeners will know, but I mean, for the most part this season, so it's Sundays that I've been doing and
Yes.
some midweeks. And for the most part, I do it from this room. It's the back bedroom in my house. I was supplied with equipment last year, so essentially I'm hooked up through the Wi-Fi.
Which is
I
insane
have,
because your room sounds better than the Aberdeen studio does, which it genuinely does, doesn't it?
I think that was the reason why they went down that line. They
Yeah.
felt perhaps they could produce better sound quality. And Colin, the engineer guy, he's done the OBs outside broadcast for the BBC for many years. He's brilliant. And so he came up, he dropped by, he set it all up. So it's less of an issue as I hand over to the commentary team. I just can quickly nip
Yes, nip out.
downstairs or
Yeah.
get another coffee and
Get another wine.
but
Treat yourself.
yeah, I've never done. I mean, Chick might have been known to have the odds little glass over the course of his broadcasting career, but no, I've managed to stay clear of
Too,
broadcasting while pished.
it's too dangerous, isn't it? It's way too
Ah,
dangerous.
absolutely.
I
I've done it a couple of times with the worst. I am not a drinker. I mean, anyone who knows me, I mean, I have the odd glass of wine, and that'll be me. Um, the worst hangover of my life was after Seville in 2003,
that you're going to get
where
people
obviously,
commenting now going, I knew it. I knew he's one of them. I knew it. That's what happens, Richard. You know it.
so after the final, and I'd been out there, I was doing the old Macaulay and Co. Fred Macaulay show. So I was doing that in the mornings and kind of co-hosting that from Seville, and also obviously doing sports then. And we did the game, just incredible drama and Porto
Mhm.
with a win there. I mean, it must have been 1, 2 in the morning by the time we even got back to the hotel after everything that was going on. So inevitably, a few drinks were had, and there were lots of Celtic fans, and I mean, there were magnificent. I mean, so many stories just from that night. Guys were brilliant. Everybody just having a great fun. But honestly, I think I got to bed at 7:30 and was awake half an hour later.
Oh,
Um, and had to go downstairs and, as I say, co-host the program. We did it outside, thankfully, in the lawn outside the hotel, so there was a little bit of fresh air. But honestly, that whole program, I was dying off. Um, it was not. I was not a pretty sight.
no.
So that was it. That was I think the one time that
No,
I
I
ever
could. I've
broadcast
done it. I
in
remember
that
one
state.
time there was an off the ball I did, and I'd run a charity gig nearby. I was my son's nursery needed a new garden, so I put one on. All the locals end up in my neighbour's garage. 65-year-old retired mechanic until about 4, 4:30 in the morning. I was doing off the ball, and I remember Stuart Cosgrove said to me, "It's the most he's ever seen someone yawn in 2 hours in his lifetime ever." And he was like, and he's 72, so he'd seen a lot. What I was gonna say, see when you're in that. When you're out in Seville, and we'll get on to your Fantasy Five team in a second, but
Yeah.
when you're out there and you're with all these footballers, all these legends, like I saw 2 days ago from when we were recording, you had a picture of Sir Alex Ferguson. Did you ever get, or do you still get imposter syndrome? Like, how am I amongst this?
Aye. Oh yeah. I mean, Sir Alec in particular, and I've probably done 10 or 12 events with him over the years. Um, And even on Saturday there, when I bumped into Menedra, it was fantastic. I know should say just so good to see him looking so well again.
Yes.
Because obviously he's had a tough time. Honestly, he was as sharp as a tack. And actually before the game, somebody had asked him, said, "Oh, how do you think the FA Cup final will go?" And he said, "Crystal Palace will win it, and this is how they'll win it. This is exactly how they will play." And now I didn't see the game, but I do know that Crystal Palace won the FA Cup, and he had absolutely no doubt. I mean, he's still just a football genius. So yeah, things like that just still blow me away. But I mean, I do remember I think it might have been the first time that I met him, and it was the Paul Laurie Foundation that I was hosting that night. Sir Alex was there. And we had a great night. It was a wonderful night. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I went down for breakfast the next morning, and I was just getting up to leave as he came into the room at the Marcliffe. He said, "Oh, Richard, are you just leaving?" I went, "No, obviously not." So I sat down with him, and I must have sat there for half an hour just listening to him.
Brilliant.
And the whole time, I'm just thinking, "Oh my God, what am I
Yep.
doing here? What am I doing here?"
It's
So
weird.
things like that still get me.
When he says your name, I've only met him
Ah,
twice, and he said my
oh,
name one time. I was like, "Oh, this is great. This is so cool." But I've never seen someone have such an aura about them and
yeah.
the kind of respect around from everyone. Because obviously, Richard, you've been presenting football now, so if that's what 34, 35 years, how much does football mean to you? Is it your life? Because obviously now you're doing sports sounds like Sunday during the week, and then you're at Cove Rangers as well. Is football just your life then?
Um, no, I mean, I think for a large part, it was. I mean, I've got four kids. You know, I had a busy family life. I had plenty to keep me occupied out with the football, and I must admit, I do like to be able to distance myself. I love the game. I love it. I couldn't have done the job I've done for all the years without having that deep, deep affection for the game. Um, but I do like to switch up. I must admit, I don't watch. I still watch what I can in terms of Scottish football. I used to watch English football all the time as well. I mean, I don't know the last time I watched an English game.
Really?
Because I kind of felt I just reached that stage where I need to just kind of distance myself a wee bit here, just actually give it a downtime. And I think that's probably particularly been the case with Cove. I mean, when I took on what when I came home was going to be just a little part-time job.
I remember you mentioned this to me, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds good." And then I see you there all the time and just very involved.
Yes. Yeah, because I think inevitably with a club, and I think it's fair to say we're probably the smallest club in the SPFL in terms of the
Is that
the
is
you know
that
where
true?
the
Do you think?
clubs come from. Well, when you think where the clubs come from, the supporter space, hey, the team and how it does means absolutely just as much to the Cove Rangers fans as it does to the supporters of any club. But there are fewer of them than there are for most of the clubs in the league. But you just get sucked into it, and there are very quickly I realised how many people are involved at the club, how many people have not only give their time, but their families have been part of the club for years and decades. I mean, there are families that stretch back 30, 40, 50 years who have been involved, the different generations have been involved in the club. I see the hard work that goes in. And I think quite apart from that, you get to know the players, the management, everybody there. You see what it means. So it is actually in terms of the Cove games, football has become to mean even more to me now than it did for many years
Yeah.
because you're personally invested in it because you see the devastating effect it can have at times, and
Mm.
you see the absolute elation when I mean some of the highs we've had. There have been a few horrible lows, but it's part of me, I'm a little bit jealous of those who were there for the first few years in the SPFL, the
The
ones who
magical
who
times.
lived through, yeah, who lived through the promotions. But that's a 6 seasons in. For a club of our size, we've finished in the top three 4 times. We've reached a playoff final with the two promotions. And for the last 2 years, they've reached the fifth round of the Scottish Cup, which is the furthest the club's ever gone. So
Yeah.
the achievements that they have compiled over those years has been brilliant. And I'm back to now being so nervous before
Really?
every single game. And you know, as a kid and probably through my 20s with Aberdeen, I was like that. I was that type of fan. The older I got, you kind of relaxed a wee bit. The big games still got you an edge. Now, every single match, I'm pacing back and forth. It's just,
It's like you're becoming a child
you
again. You're Benjamin Buttoning
I know
yourself.
it
That's
is. I
good.
know. Yeah, I think I am. I absolutely am.
That's
But
good. Right.
it's I've got to say it's been a joy. It's been an absolute joy. I've thoroughly enjoyed after all these years of assuming that I knew what went on behind the scenes of football clubs. In the last 3 years, I've discovered what actually goes on
Yeah,
and what it takes.
I can only imagine that because what I've found is over the years I've become slightly more involved with Thistle, whether it's players I know, managers, stuff like that, behind the scenes things. And it's harder and harder to criticise on the radio because you know that A, they're probably listening. I remember once I criticised, I was interviewing Gary Caldwell, it was a very tense time, and Ian McCall was like, you should have gone harder, you should have done this, should have that. And you forget they all are listening. So you don't want to criticise them. So let's get into your Fantasy Five team. So the rules are
Right.
you have to have at least one player from the team you support. So I presume we're going Aberdeen and not Cove, Richard?
No, we'll go Aberdeen.
Yeah.
I think that's probably more realistic.
Okay. And we're going
I'm going all. I've got all five. I'm going all out.
all five
Aberdeen.
Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you? Oh, you're the first person to have done this. Okay.
Well, I am unapologetic because I not only want to have a team that wins but entertains, and I think I can provide that for you from
Great.
those players who have given me so much joy over the years.
Okay, so we're going conventional goalie, I presume.
Yes.
Let's start off. Who are we going for? And
Well,
why
it's
is it
gonna
Jim
be-
Layton?
It's Jim Layton because he is the best goalkeeper that I have watched over the course of my football supporting life. I saw a lot of him, obviously. I mean, saw him right the way through that period. I saw his debut. Um, so there was a friendly against Middlesbrough, I think, where he got one half, and John Gardner got the other half. So that had been what, 77, 78. His debut was at Tynecastle, first game of the season, pouring with rain. And Aberdeen won 4-1, and we got chased out by Hearts fans and ended up having our coach stoned.
The good old days.
These happy memories stick with you after all these years. From that point on, yeah, he was out of the team. Bobby Clark came back in. They won the league in 79-80, and then from that point onwards, Jim was unstoppable. I mean, I was looking back just to actually get the figures. Because you have these memories, you think, oh yeah, there were 3 seasons in a row where that defence, him, Miller, McLeish, at the heart of it, conceded I think it was between 21 and 25 goals in the whole season, 3 seasons in a row. And the saves that he made, and I think more recently, younger fans will look at Craig Gordon, and he makes breathtaking saves, and Alan McGregor did it for years as well. Contemporary of Jim, Andy Gorham was another one. But for me, Leighton just made saves that you felt he had no right to make. And he didn't just do it a couple of times a season. He did it,
Yeah.
I mean, every second match, it seemed. So, I mean, just absolutely 91 caps for his country, the best clean sheet record for Scotland.
Is that right? Is he the
you
best
know,
clean sheet
yeah.
record?
Yeah. Yeah, I think is it not in the 50s, low 50s maybe? I mean, it's a phenomenal record. Craig Brown, God rest his soul, I use that stat simply because Craig used to throw that one out from time to time.
Yeah.
No, Jim Leighton was just outstanding. So I kind of feel that's me off to a good start with him between the shrunken posts.
I sat next to him at the Dennis Law dinner and just I just constantly want him to take his teeth out, but he wouldn't do it. But he was saying he now works in like oil and gas, and he says the minute he walks in, he finds out someone's an Aberdeen fan. He's like, "Yeah, I've sold some stuff today. Like this is so easy. Just it must be a legend up there." So your next Aberdeen player, I feel like you might have mentioned 2 of them, but I'm not 100% sure. So who's your next one?
No, I can't put Big Alex in simply because I don't need a big, ugly central defender to head the ball clear in my five-a-side team. I feel that the ball's going to be on the deck most of the time. And if that's the case, there is only one man, and it is God himself, Willie Miller, who most appearances for Aberdeen. Voted the greatest Aberdeen player ever. 65 international caps, and without doubt, for me, the best penalty box defender. I mean,
Really?
certainly in terms of Scottish football that I have seen, there have been a few contenders, I guess, but you never saw Willie making a last gasp sliding tackle because his positioning was outstanding.
Mm.
I
I think
remember after they beat Bayern Munich and Karl-Heinz Rummenigge talking about Willie Miller and how he had patrolled him over the two legs. Now he was magnificent, and he had that. It was like Graham Souness, I think, that kind of aura, that's yeah. Don't even think about
yep.
taking me on the football pitch.
I think I've heard him. I think it was him saying it before. He was like, if you have to slide tackle, it means you're in the wrong position, and that's very much a good way of looking at it. For yourself, Richard, I'd imagine you and, as you call him, God, have shared a lot of car journeys up and down to Glasgow all that time. He must be one of your contemporaries now. Is that quite surreal?
Yeah. I, it it kind of blows my mind. Look, he's a good friend. I mean, a really good friend now, and that has developed over many years. I mean, he was very untrusting of the press and media generally, and I
Rightly
remember.
so, let's be honest.
Well, you say that. I mean, I do remember my early days at Northtown, and the first couple of times trying to approach Willie Miller for an interview when he was still playing at that time. And then he went into management, and Willie, I think, would admit that the 3 years that he was in management kind of changed him as a person. He was hard to get through to. I think he once he had left, and then so it was the playoff against Dunfermline in 1995, the final first leg at Pittodrie. And that was the first time that he'd kind of broken cover, if you like. He'd been sacked in the February, and he did the first leg for us at Pittodrie on the radio. Um, and he's pretty much done it ever since.
Yeah, I was
I
going to
mean,
say.
you're talking about 30 years. But he did say very quickly he'd begun to develop much more of an appreciation for what we were trying to do. And I think he lightened up. And I think he has this image as probably for a lot of people on the outside of being quite
Doer.
dour, probably. He's got a brilliant sense of
Yeah.
humour, and he's a funny guy, actually, Willie. And still, I think, absolutely spot on in terms of his assessment. I mean, there are lots of the pundits that I've worked with and we've used over the years are very, very good. But and I think the good thing about Willie is he tells us it is he's quite happy to criticise Aberdeen, but he does
Oh,
it
he
in a
loves
fair and
criticising
balanced way.
Aberdeen, Richard.
Does
He
he?
loves it. That's one of his hobbies, I think.
He would much rather not have to. Pardon me. I think that's been part of the issue in recent years is that there's been plenty to criticise. But no, he's brilliant. He's a very, very good pundit, but he was an absolutely outstanding central defender. So I ain't conceding any goals with Leighton and Willie Miller
Yeah,
both in
so
that team.
let's go into your next player, because in my head, I've picked 3 out the 5, so I'm intrigued. I think this is one of the ones I'm not going to get. So who's your next one?
Well, next up, I'll go with Gordon Strachan.
No, I wouldn't have gone with Gordon. Okay, interesting. Okay.
Well, I mean, that just shows you how mad you are. Because in a five-a-side team on that small pitch, look, there were a few contenders. I thought about Peter Weir, and I thought about Dougie Bell, who would probably be a little bit left field for some people, but Dougie Bell was just ridiculous. I mean, the boys in the Gothenburg team would say, if we were tired, we'd just give the ball to Dougie, and he just ran about with it for 2 or 3 minutes, and that was fine. But no, Strachan was when he first came, the Billy McNeil signed him, and it was 50 grand plus a midfielder who has probably slipped into the mist of time called Jim Shearer, who went to Dundee, and Gordon came. Took him a while to settle in. I think Billy played him with a number 4 shirt on his back to start with, and then eventually number 7. And it took him a little while, but wow, once he found his feet, and I think he scored, essentially a right-sided midfielder, wasn't it, an out-and-out winger? But he scored over 20 goals in 3 successive seasons for Aberdeen. Absolutely central to everything that the club achieved. during the early to mid 1980s. And just, I just used, we just used to love watching him, and not only for what he did for the team, but the way he would noise up the opponents and the
Yes.
away fans. There was always that little edge with Gordon, which he obviously kept going right the way through. And I have to say, he's another one who I just absolutely love being in his company. I mean, just one of the funniest men. I mean, yourself apart.
No, I'll take that.
One of the funniest men. And you know, a really, really sharp wit at times as well.
I think he's one of them people I've seen most from the football world in comedy clubs. So he goes to the Stand in Glasgow quite a lot and stuff like that. Big fan of that. And I remember one time I had a really weird moment. So you're standing on stage and you're like, that's Gordon Strachan. But the weirdest one I had for me was I was standing on stage and I looked to my left and James Grady was in the front row. And I just, why is James Grady here? And no one else would probably know who James Grady was at that point. But I was just like, I watched him score 15 goals. So actually, do you know what? I'm not going to say the exact number because I bet you haven't a book behind you of how many he scored in that season.
No, he did have a very productive season. And he showed us all his penis as well.
Yes, he did.
It was excellent.
That's the main
his penis
takeaway.
wasn't excellent.
Yeah,
But,
no, it wasn't. It was it was cold for him. Wasn't good.
Yeah.
So we're starting. I mean, Leighton, Miller, Strachan. So probably combined, we're looking at about 200 Scotland caps.
Well, Gordon was 50, Willie was 65, and Jim was 91. So
what's that? Yeah, just over 200. Yep, just over 200.
Yeah.
Good. Your next pick, Richard Gordon. Who are we going for?
Right. Well, I had various options in my mind, but my partner Anthea has made it clear that there is only one man I can choose, and he is a man who resonates with women of a certain age who follow Aberdeen Football Club, and that is Ian Jess.
This was the one I had in my head. I knew you would go for Ian Jesse. Second mention of him on the podcast. I think, was it Chris Forbes picked Ian Jess as well?
Okay.
But I think Ian Jess was the only footballer in his team. The rest were cartoon characters and things like that. So you're in good company there. So why Ian Jess over who's the honourable mention?
Oh, I mean, so many. So I could have gone for more of a midfield enforcer, I suppose, in the likes of Neil Simpson and Neil Cooper. I could have gone for the silky skills of Jim Bett, who was just an absolute joy to watch. I just tried to find, and this shows you where I suppose the club has been. I tried to find someone a bit more contemporary.
Yeah.
And
were you not tempted by a Zero Ali or a Stavro or one of them?
No, I wasn't.
Peter Pollitt?
No, strangely enough. I mean, you know what? And I've actually, it was one time I did this kind of your best team, and I put in Steve Tosh.
Okay. Fair.
And he was part of let's be honest, it was an Aberdeen team under Steve Patterson that struggled. I loved Stevie Tosh, just his attitude and just
one of them.
Just come on, get every single game. He got the odd goal, Stevie, but he's a brilliant guy. But that was more just a bit of fun.
Can we make this clear, Richard? Are you picking Ian Jess on football abilities or because your partner said he's good looking? Which is going here?
I mean, she and other women would attempt to suggest that they liked him only for his football ability, but we all know that's not. When he was inducted into the Aberdeen Hall of Fame, honestly, I looked around the room. I was hosting the event that night. I looked around the room, and I think it was 75% women who were in that room. I mean, to be fair, I did admit that I was getting a bit moist myself as Ian Jess came up onto the stage. He was brilliant. I mean, and actually, I remember last game of the season, I would have still been at Northsend at the time, and I was out at the back of the stand, and the kids were up there, and there was Ian Jess, there was Scott Booth, there was a lad Scott Harvey, who ended up at Partick Thistle.
Yes, another one.
I think Robert McRobb. There was a group of them. Some who made it in the game, and some who sadly disappeared. But I mean, I just remember that I was still quite young myself at the time, but they were just boys. And the next season, and it was he'd been in and around the first team. Then it was the League Cup final '89. We got the starting 11, and Alex Smith has chosen Ian Jess. It was like, whoa, incredible. And from that point onwards, some of the goals he scored I mean, there was one which has gone down in the annals of history as a thunder bastard. Just the type of strike it went from about 35 yards into the top corner at Ibrox. And you can imagine that went down well with the Aberdeen fans. But
Yep.
there was one at Tanner. I mean, it's just countless. And he was magnificent. He obviously had the broken leg. He had the spell down south as well. He came back. Um, but I think most Aberdeen fans who saw Ian play, he just will have such affection, such a soft spot for Ian. Just really nice guy as well, but an outstandingly talented football player.
It must be for you, because you've mentioned you were at Jim Leighton's debut, a friendly against Middlesbrough, you're down at Tynecastle. It must be surreal for you 30, 40 years later to say the sentence, when I was hosting the Aberdeen Hall of Fame, because that is, from the guy who generally, similar to myself, probably travelled supporting Aberdeen on supporters buses, went to all the games, to be in that position. It's phenomenal. So I'm guessing your striker is also a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, he is. He absolutely is. And to be fair, there were a few that, when I think, just guys who, as soon as they got the ball anywhere near the goal, you just knew that they were going to score. Certainly Duncan Shearer fell into that category. Adam Rooney, more recently. Adam was absolutely outstanding. Frank McDougall, just a couple of seasons, but during that time, the late Frank was it just wasn't the most athletic Frank, but wow, he knew how to finish.
That's what you want, though. You want a kind of
Yeah,
chunky guy
totally.
to bang them in. That's what
Yeah,
you want, Richard.
I've gone Joe Harper,
Yeah.
and that so the first Aberdeen team I saw, my heroes were Bobby Clark, who was a goalie, Arthur Graham, who was just 17 at the time, and played in I think he'd won the Junior Cup the previous year with Cambuslang and then won the Scottish Cup in 1970.
Brilliant.
17 years old. One of the kids, Bobby Calder, who was a legend. I think most clubs had these legendary scouts, and Bobby Calder had brought Arthur up, bumper as he was. And so he 6 seasons, he was my hero. But Joe was the other one. And just simply because he scored goals. King Joey Harper finished up. I mean, I think initially they talked about 199 goals, but they managed to find a few more, so he got over the 200. But he is the club record goal scorer, and honestly, for a period of time, I remember. So a couple of seasons it would have been, as a kid going to the games and you watching Joey scoring, and then the news broke that he was being sold to Everton, and it was, I think, December, but it was a dull, cloudy, misty, horrible, cold afternoon, and we drew 0-0 at home to Arbroath in the first game after he had gone. And it just seemed to sum up the moods of us all. So he went away, he had that spell at Everton, and then the word came that he was coming back, that Aberdeen were bringing him back. But Hibs were also in for him, and it came down to, I don't know, a few £1,000 probably. And Dick Donald, who was a magnificent chairman for Aberdeen, but knew the value of a penny and a pound, and wasn't prepared to pay more than he had offered. And Joey ended up at Hibs, and I was devastated. And so, I mean, for that period of time, I still love the Dons, but I actually became. I wanted to follow Hibs, I became a Hibs fan as well, because Joe was there. My old dad, God bless him, he took me to a few Hibs games just so I could see Joe Harper.
Did he actually?
Yeah, a couple down at Easter Road, the old big terracing there. I remember being there, and I remember a game at Tannadice he took me to. But my heart was never really in it, but it was just a chance to see Joe.
Wow.
And then came the news that he was coming back, and I think Aberdeen were playing St Johnstone that night, and then he played in a reserve game towards the end of the season. It was changed different days then, but you could actually, although you couldn't play for the first team until the following season, you could play for the reserves. And we got about 6,500 at Pittodrie that night for the reserve game, just because Joe was back. And then he went on, of course, and carried on. And it wasn't until, he got a really bad injury, and then he and Sir Alex Ferguson didn't have the best of relationships, and it all just kind of petered out. But the joy, the one image of Joe that I think any fan of my vintage would have. We're in the beach end, so what is now
Yep.
the Richard Donald two-tier stand. So the beach end, back of the goal, and it was right at the start of the season. It was a game against Rangers, and he smashed it in, and he just fell to his knees in front of the beach end with his arms outraised, and that is the image that will be forever ingrained
we've
in my
we've
mind when I think about
we've
Joe
got
Harper.
we've got a picture of Chris Doolan doing similar in front of all the fat, and it's
Oh,
just like, yeah, just that's art to me. Here's a question for you,
yeah.
Richard. So let's go through the team. You get Leighton, Miller, Strachan, Jess, Harper. In current terms, if imagine they're all playing the game right now, do you think that is £100 million team?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, wow. I suppose it depends which team you're looking at in terms of who's paying
Yeah,
the
but then
transfer fees.
if you've
But
got
jeez.
Jim Leighton's 10 to 20 million,
Oh, that's start. You could start there. Willie's going to be 60, 70. I mean, Gordon Strachan, yeah, a right-sided midfielder who scores 20 plus goals a
yeah,
season. Wow. Ian Jess, we're talking 100 million, and Harper. I mean,
invaluable.
you'd struggle to raise enough money
Yeah, if
to,
Miovski gets 6.75 million, then what are you
wow.
getting for Joe Harper?
I
Easily.
mean, it's madness. The sums of money that are spoken about these days. And do you know what? In terms of English football, I talked about the fact I don't really watch it, and that's partly why it switched me off because it just feels it's a business more than anything else now.
Mm.
And I and then I guess as we get older, we're all tempted to kind of look back in the old days with rose tinted glasses. But I'm actually really pleased that I saw football through the era that I did. And particularly, obviously, as an Aberdeen fan, because I had an absolute joy of not only living through that period, but just
Winning.
being enough of an age, just about, to actually properly appreciate it. I never took it for granted. So I wrote the Gothenburg book to celebrate the 30th anniversary, and the amount of people. So we're doing obviously a bit of publicity and signings and stuff with that, and the amount of people that I met during that time who and talk about Gothenburg, say, "Oh, were you there?" The amount of people I met who said, "Oh no, I couldn't get my time off work. I thought, I decided I would go. I'll go next year. Okay. Next
Oh
year,
no.
next year." Now, we did get to the semi-finals the following year and lost to Porto, but um, I never ever took it for granted. The cup wins, the league titles, and in particular, I mean the moments. So we played the Belgian side Watershire in the semi-final. We were 2-0 up within 4 minutes. From that point onwards, I knew that I was going to Gothenburg.
Yeah.
So I worked in the bank at the time. We won 5-1 the first leg, so I mean it was clear. And I went in the next morning straight in to see my manager. Lovely guy, Ken McLaughlin, big Aberdeen fan, and said, "Boss, I need to go. I need my holidays. I need to go to Gothenburg." He went, "Yeah, it's fine. It's fine." I said, "But I can't afford it." He went, "How much do you need?" So
No.
I got a personal loan for £400, which went down as a new fridge and carpets. And so I paid that back over the next 2 years. So every month, as the standing order came out of my bank account, it was just a little reminder of
Of how good.
Gothenburg.
And how did you go? Did you get the boat like some people did? Did you
No,
fly?
I had never flown, and I tried to get onto the Sinclair ferry, and it was full. A lot of my mates were on it, but it was full. So I flew. I was absolutely petrified, terrified at the thought of flying. So I flew for the first time from Aberdeen to Gothenburg,
That was your
shitting
first flight.
myself. I absolutely shitting myself all the way, but it was worth it.
And I'm guessing the flight home was a lot
And
easier.
it was a wee bit easier.
And then Richard, so we've got the Aberdeen over here. The manager for your team. This needs to be someone in your phone book. Who are you going to get to corral these? Because I'd imagine you could probably
Right.
do Willie Miller player manager technically.
Yeah, I
But
could do.
what are you
And
going to go?
there were various others. I'm probably going to surprise you here, but it's somebody who I hold in very high regard, both for what he's done in football, but also just as a human being. And that's Martin O'Neill. I just think I've had the pleasure of. Didn't really know him. I'd done the odd interview during his time at Celtic, but I've done a few events with Martin. And I've seen how he deals with people. And I mean, hugely intelligent guy. Obviously, I think everybody knows you go to courts, he would study law and legal cases, and fantastic mind. But I've seen how good he is with people at these things, and just like most of them are, to be fair. But he's and his stories. I'm there because I cannot get enough Brian Clough stories.
Yes.
Yeah, I've watched every Brian Clough documentary there is. I've read every book there is. He just this incredible figure. So even to be in the company of someone who shared a dressing room for all those years with Brian Clough, I mean, that's almost enough. Um, but no, he's. I think he would be great with it. I mean, can you imagine just sitting in that room, in particular with Martin O'Neill and Gordon Strachan?
Yes, do you know that was the two things I was thinking.
Oh,
Also,
what?
what a flex this is to have your manager as a two-time European Cup winner as well. Just throw that into the mix.
Yeah,
That's
not bad.
that's a great combination. And see, when you look at the team, Richard, and when you've done Sportsline all these years, you still have all your stats books, don't you?
Yeah, and so I've got all the stats books and folders
What's
in
the
the wee
plan?
cupboard
What do you
next
do with
door.
them? Because they
I
could
don't
be
know.
genuinely in a Scottish Football History Museum.
Do you know when I actually moved back up from Glasgow, I went through them all, and there were a lot. Just the old notebooks. So I kept 12 or 15. So Scotland at France '98, European finals, particular moments. I
Hmm.
have kept them. I've certainly got all the old folders for the stats. Everything, of course, now. I mean, it used to be handwritten
Yeah.
for a lot of it,
I've watched you in the BBC
and
canteen writing some
typewriter.
stuff out,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
great to
absolutely.
watch.
So it's all on the laptop now. And I kind of wonder. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what happens. I don't know when I stop doing sports sound, but I do. I've often thought, will I keep doing my stats, even if I'm
Oh, I
not
never
doing the
thought of
program
that.
anymore? I've got all these seasons going back. Could I stop? I mean,
I
I'd
I
have to.
I remember. Oh, you might know this better than I was. I was driving somewhere and James Tavernier missed a penalty, and it comes back to you in the studio, and you went, "Oh, that's the third time out of 8 penalties. It's hit the left-hand post and gone out." And I remember sitting in the car. I was driving to somewhere in England, and I went, "Who knows that? Like, how would you?" And you just had that offhand, and
So one of the I mean, I've refined my stats over the years and I've added things into them, but one of the things I do keep is penalties awarded and conceded to all the Premiership clubs. I've got that down, the numbers to scored, or sorry, awarded, conceded, and then down the right hand column of the Excel spreadsheet, I've got a note of all the ones that were missed, and not only so sad. Not only are they recorded there, but yeah, how they have been missed. So whether they've been saved, hit the bar, hit the post, gone over the bar.
because
I mean,
I remember.
I'm actually beginning to bore myself shitless here, but
But I remember when, so I got asked, I think it was after the Euro, so everyone was away, so they asked me to do sports sounding. I remember thinking, I'm going to have nowhere near that level. Like, how it's just phenomenal. And what is the plan for the future then? Are you wanting to carry on as long as possible? Are you going to stick to Cove for the next 5 years? What's the plan?
yeah, I mean, I'm not in any hurry to. I've always said that I still love radio. And I did a bit of telly at various points over the years. I do events. I do lots of other things. But from the moment I sat down in a radio studio, I thought, "Oh wow, this is it. This is a business. This is what I want to do." So I've never hankered after anything other than doing live radio, and it's live radio in particular. No scripts. Yeah, armed with my stats folders, and as you get older, years of experience. There's next to nothing I haven't dealt with, and I mean there's some really momentous occasions, things that have gone badly wrong, all sorts of dramas and controversies. You store them all up, I suppose, and you use them when you need them. So, um, I mean, I'll be very happy to carry on the radio for certainly for the next few years. I would think the Cove stuff I love. I would say that having decided to come home for a nice, quiet few years. The last 3 years have actually been busier than I've ever been. But it's great. Yeah, hey, keeps me young, and I'm absolutely loving it. And let's be honest, it's not work, is it?
No,
I mean,
no.
I have been absolutely blessed to spend. Well, I think back to when I started at North Sound, which would have been the start of '87. So, it's almost 4 decades doing a job that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
So,
You can tell that, I think, when
long
you
may that
listen.
continue.
You can tell that when you're chatting to people. I do think you can definitely tell that. And yeah, it's been so good to have you on this show. I kind of wish I'd thought you would have picked 5 Aberdeen players. That is very on brand, but I don't know why I didn't think of that. Brilliant team. So let's just recap it. So your team, Richard Gordon, you have Jim Layton, Willie Miller, Gordon Strachan, Ian Jess, Joe Harper, managed by Martin O'Neill. Not
That's
bad,
the
is it?
team.
Not bad, is it?
I'm very happy with that.
Richard Gordon, thank you very much for joining us on Fantasy Fives.
Absolute pleasure.